Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Tailosive EV live on YouTube. This is a compensation live stream because I typically go live on Wednesdays, but because of just me traveling, being in different places, and having limited time between work for events and stuff, I wasn't able to stream last Wednesday, but I had a little bit extra spare time today to stream. So I figured, hey, I didn't get an EV stream in, might as well do it now. And we're kicking off the live stream. Of course, we cover more than just the subject and the title and the thumbnail, but I just pick one so that we have something to start talking about. But I know the chat can take it in different directions and different subjects, and that's fine. But the one I wanted to start with was Rivian actually announcing something that many people perceive to be potentially a negative, but I actually looked as more of a positive. So I have the article and the quote exactly pulled up here. CEO RJ confirmed in an email to employees. This was just a couple days ago. I think it was 3 or 4 days ago. He said, over the last 6 months, the world has dramatically changed with inflation reaching record highs, interest rates rapidly rising, and commodity prices continuing to climb, all of which have contributed to the global capital markets tightening. We are financially well positioned, and our mission is more important than ever, but we do fully realize our potential. Our strategy must support our sustainable growth as we ramp toward profitability. We need to be able to continue to grow and scale without additional financing in this macro environment. To achieve this, we have simplified our product roadmap and focused on where it is most impactful to deploy capital. So then Electric brought up here that Rivian has 14,000 workers, so a 6% cut will affect hundreds of employees. And Scaringe apologized and said, thank you for working here. But I actually see that one of the biggest issues with Rivian is their operating expenses being far too high. And the fact that they are willing to cut back their workforce to sustain their future, I see that as a benefit because it means they're looking at their spending and realizing it's getting pretty out of hand. And especially as you're ramping up, that's when the contracts with suppliers and ordering lots of components starts to rise. And it starts to make sense like, oh, okay, well, we don't want to bankrupt ourselves here. Let's figure out who needs to be here and who doesn't. So it's sad, of course, that there's going to be some Rivian employees looking for work and that are leaving the company. But I do think that it's the responsible thing to do. And I want to give credit where credit is due for Rivian because, Tesla even is a very profitable company with record-leading margins in the automotive industry. And I think I read they've reached a point where Tesla is making more money now than Ford and GM is, despite selling far less vehicles. Ford and GM still deliver far more cars total than Tesla does, but we're not talking just EVs, we're just talking cars. But the gross margin on the electric vehicles Tesla is selling is so high that Tesla just brings in a crap ton of money from their vehicles. Um, so the fact that even Tesla, a very successful brand with a lot of revenue, is still cutting back their workforce means that, yes, especially a company that's not profitable yet, that is burning through a lot of cash to bring their vehicle to market, they should be looking at their workforce as well and looking to cut back on salaried employees, I assume. The other sections of the business, whether that's hourly employees, people working on the assembly line, or people working in customer service, those types of things will likely need to continue hiring, but likely don't make as much as maybe the more salaried staff. So Cam 3087 says, my Rivian cost average is $46. Should I be worried? Only if you need the money soon. I don't know how much you have invested in them, but yeah, you're definitely in the red right now. But I would just say hold. You haven't lost money until you sold it. I'm not trying to give financial advice here. I'm not a financial advisor. You got to do your own research. I'm so sick of saying that, but legally it's just how I cover myself. I'm not telling you what to do with your own money. You have to do your own research, and I'm not a financial advisor. But if you're just asking for my opinion, not advice, just opinion based, I think Rivian will be fine, but the stock market's going to do what the stock market's going to do. I am not the type of person that's convinced that the market responds to companies' real world performance. Like, I just sharing my own bit of information, I have not bought Rivian stock. I love the product, and I think the R1T is probably the coolest truck out right now in the world, gas or electric. There's not any other pickup truck I would rather own that's out and available, and I would probably buy a Rivian before I buy a Cybertruck, to be honest, but that's just because I have fairly pessimistic views on the Cybertruck. But the truth is, Rivian is in a very, very early state right now. They haven't even been delivering products for a year. So it's yet to be seen if they can turn this ship around and start to actually turn a profit. As far as new EV startups go, I think Rivian likely is the most poised for success just because of how much cash they have in the bank. But I think their current valuation is quite high. Even with the stock at what, $34 a share, the market cap of around 30 billion. 30 billion is still really, really high for a company that's hoping to deliver 25,000 vehicles this year. And I think there's absolutely a lot of EV hype where there's a ton of people that are just like, oh, it's an electric vehicle stock. I got to buy it. I got to buy it. It's like, okay, that just because Tesla had tremendous growth doesn't mean that Rivian is also going to have tremendous growth. You know, Rivian, I forget the exact number RJ threw out there, but it was something like in 2030 we hope to have, I can't remember, what was it, like 10% market share or something. So it's like you have to keep in context that the reason I think Tesla has so much interest and so much hype, and the reason so many people invest in Tesla, is because they are not going for any like small specific market like Rivian. Not to say pickup trucks or SUVs are a small market, but they're definitely leaning more towards the off-road demographic, and they're leaning more towards adventure vehicles. And I do hope that they can make more affordable vehicles in the future, but it's still it's much more of a domestic market, I would say, than what Tesla's trying to do. Tesla is at this point delivering or making more vehicles, at least in Asia, in Giga Shanghai, than they are the United States. And now they're ramping up production in Europe. They're trying to make vehicles that will be popular all over the world. Rivian, you know, they're leaning into the truck and they're leaning into the SUV, but I can just tell you by the size of them alone, they're not going to be super popular vehicles overseas. They may get some interest and some hype around them, but I don't think as much as a Model 3 or a Model Y will. And because Rivian is leaning more into off-roading and adventure vehicles, that typically makes them a bit less efficient. They got to use bigger battery packs, which means that's fundamentally always going to prevent them from ramping as quickly as Tesla can, because Tesla can use smaller batteries that require less energy and go the same distance. So I just wouldn't say that Rivian is the next Tesla. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. So that's why, like, if it's evaluation or valuation's already at $30 billion, how much more growth can they get, even if they do hit their target of 25,000 by this year, which they say they're going to. Rivian, or I don't know exactly what to search, but I want to see the goal they had. It was an impressive goal, but yeah, it was okay. I was right. 10% market share goal. I think they said they wanted that by when? 2030? Yeah, of the EV market. So that's impressive considering how far behind they are right now. You know, there's a lot of time between Rivian. You know, right now they've delivered probably 5 or 6,000 trucks, and they're hoping to one day be at 10% of the EV market by 2030. So not the car market, but 10% of all EVs. What will Tesla be by 2030? You know, are they still going to be at like the 60% market share, or will all the other legacy autos catching up push Tesla towards 40% market share, in which case they're still 4 times the size as Rivian, and they're probably still going to be profitable. Who makes Rivian's batteries? I thought it was LG. I'll double check. Our X100 says Samsung, but I'm not sure. As Snyder V7 says, just hooked up my Starlink. This is my way of testing it. Oh, cool. Congratulations. I hope it works well for you. I don't have Starlink anymore, but I still check the subreddits pretty frequently, and I've been seeing improved upload speeds, which is cool. My friend Mike from the podcast also is still on Starlink. But Cam, I wouldn't be worried about your stock. I would just say hold. I don't I don't think the company's going to go bankrupt like Who Is This does. But we can agree to disagree on that. Unless you have what's your logic? Like, I want to hear from the chat, like, if you do believe Rivian will go bankrupt, why do you think that is? Do you think the ramp will go too slowly? Or do you think their operating expenses won't go down? Or do you think they should cut more of their workforce? Is 6% not enough? Or, you know, like, what mistakes are they going to make along the way? Alpha says he saw a Rivian R1T the other day. I did too. They're beautiful. I saw one up here in Washington. I was really happy to see them. It's not just a California thing because I was seeing a couple back home, and I was like, "Hey, there's actually Rivians around." It's probably just because EVs are popular in California because of gas prices and everything. But we come up here, and I still see what I saw. I saw one parked in someone's driveway, so I didn't want to take a picture of it because it was on someone's property. I wasn't just driving around and one drove by. Um, so yeah, it's cool to see them, even though they're at such low volume, right? Like there's still only 5 or 6 thousand have been delivered so far, and yet like it seems like no matter where I go, I can see at least one driving around, and they're sure cool looking. Virgil says Sandy the Sage Monroe sure likes Rivian. Yes, he does. It was really satisfying seeing him take delivery, and him and his wife got to take it off road and everything. I love Monroe content. I was actually just watching Monroe right before I went live, and the 4680 pack teardown and everything. So he seems to be a big fan of Rivian and was really impressed with the suspension system and all that. So, and I am too. I think like as far as the product goes, they've nailed the product. It's just a back end of the company that needs some work and needs some attention, and that's what I wanted to applaud them for with this live stream, was just saying that it's not easy to cut the workforce, laying off hundreds of employees and saying goodbye to people that have been with you for years. That's not an easy decision, but it's often the right decision, because ultimately, if the company's goal is to make products, quality products that people love and care about and want to keep using, it's not to employ a bunch of people. And also, if you go bankrupt, then everybody is unemployed. So sometimes you got to make the hard calls like that and figure out this is worth it, this isn't worth it. Oof Dad says, can they get through their backlog of underpriced R1Ts? I think everything they are producing at launch pricing is probably losing money. Oh yeah, no doubt. I'm sure they're probably dropping. I mean, at this point, early in the ramp up, they're likely in the $1 million. It costs them $1 million per truck. Um, Maybe they're slowly working their way down on that high pricing, but yeah, it's definitely not profitable yet, and it probably won't be for several years. It's just a matter of how quickly can they scale up and improve their operating expenses, and the more vehicles they can deliver, the more revenue they can secure. But yeah, honoring those underpriced R1Ts was definitely gonna win over some fans in the long run, but cost them quite a bit in the short term. Um, let's see. King of Florida solving the money problem explains in some of his videos why they will go bankrupt. Well, that's great, but I'm not going to go pull up his videos right now while we're live streaming. I want to hear your arguments. Don't just use someone else's argument for you. What did he say that stood out to you? Just repeat that. Let's hear it. Low ambition, high cost, slow to cut spending, very low volume. I think they've got a lot of cash in the bank, so I don't know what's too slow to cut spending, because they still have a lot of cash and now they're cutting back on their OPEX. So, and I wouldn't say incredibly low volume. I mean, yeah, obviously every brand is going to start at pretty low volume, but if they're shooting for 25,000 vehicles in the first year, and of course that's just going to continue. It's ramping much faster than Lucid. I would have less faith in Lucid succeeding, but 25,000 vehicles, and if let's say they had an average selling price of $80,000, that's $2 billion in revenue right there. Now, of course, it took them many billions to get that happening, but the ramp up's going to continue, and if they can keep their expenses in check, which it sounds like they are by cutting the workforce, then this is several billion in revenue within the next couple of years, easy. Everyone and everything will go bankrupt except Tesla. Yeah, that's true. I haven't watched Stephen Mark Ryan in a while. It just got nothing against the guy, but it just started to get a little repetitive for me. And he also just kind of kept. I'm not trying to create drama here, and again, I haven't watched his videos in a while, but he kept kind of doubling down on his predictions and kept saying, mark my words, Tesla will do this, I promise you, come back and hold me accountable. And Tesla didn't achieve the things that Steven said they were going to, at least in the timeline he said they were going to. And I didn't really see anyone calling him out on it or holding him accountable. It's like, okay, they fell a bit short. And sure, it may have not been their fault, but don't like double down on they will do this. I promise you they will do, and then they don't, and then just kind of gloss over it and ignore it. Um, Also, ticking off a lot of customers by letting others skip the line. Uh, Wait, who are you talking about? Because Tesla and Rivian, I think, is guilty of doing that. They let some people skip the line if you have a Rivian reservation and then you access the garage, or the shop or whatever Rivian calls it. They have like this feature where if you have one on order, they'll let you know if they have like denied delivery Rivians. Like sometimes people get assigned a VIN and then they back out on the purchase, so they have like excess vehicles in a certain area that they'll basically accelerated delivery. And I saw Kyle from Out of Spec get a Rivian pretty quickly. He definitely didn't wait as long as other Rivian reservation holders did. But usually that's the game you got to play. You just pay a premium. But actually, what happened today, which was pretty shocking, I don't know if I don't think Chris is here, but Chris from Dirty Tesla ordered a Model 3 of my exact spec. He got the rear-wheel drive, 18-inch aero wheels with a white exterior, white interior, no full self-driving. He ordered it like 2 months after me, and he took delivery of his today, and he's in Michigan. I am 3 hours from the Fremont factory, and I ordered in March, and I'm still waiting on mine. So Tesla's just as guilty of letting people, like, not having a very clear, obvious way of taking delivery of vehicle. Tesla has weird delivery dates. Rivian does too, but that's just because the whole concept of shipping and moving around giant electric vehicles and delivering them to people with online orders, that's a whole nightmare in itself. You're not going to be able to exactly deliver each vehicle in the exact order that someone reserved, because the reservations are coming from all over the country in totally different places. So it's not like whoever orders first gets their car first. That's just not the way it works. Rivian's a cool concept, but it doesn't fit into my lifestyle. Yeah, I get what you mean, Alpha. I'm in the same regard. The difference though is, like, I wish I could justify it. I wish I had a lifestyle that could justify the Rivian, because I think it would be really cool to own one, but I would have to invent reasons to use it. I would have to, like, I guess I'm going to be an off-roader now, or I guess I'm going to go camping all the time now, but I just don't do that currently. So yeah, it's it'd be a very expensive thing to force my lifestyle to change, which I just don't think is very responsible anyway. Oof Dad says, do you have the production rates for the past few quarters handy? Seems like their slope is not terrible. No, I don't have it right in front of me, but I know that if you scroll back, they did like a couple hundred, I think, in the first quarter, and then a couple thousand in the next, and then 4,000 after that. So they've had a very obvious, like, doubling effect. Rivian has gone from, like, in Q2, I believe, they built more vehicles than they built in Q1 and Q4 combined. So there's certainly kind of an S curve going on with the Rivian production rate, which is a good sign. You don't want a very slow production ramp, because that means you're securing less revenue. Ultimately, what's going to keep a company afloat is a healthy amount of money coming in. And if you're ramping really slowly like Lucid is, then it's just a very slow, gradual, your revenue doesn't come in very quickly, even though your operating expenses are very high. Mike says, don't need as many salespeople and managers when your products are selling like crazy already. That's true. I'll give a lot of credit to that. Rivian made a fantastic product, and they could probably try a bit less hard with selling it, because the YouTubers can do that now. Now that it's out in the wild, you don't need to spend much money on people selling the product. And as much as I enjoyed the Rivian event, like, I went to the First Mile event twice. It's a free event, and I think they're still doing them on occasion, but they bring up, RX has the production numbers here. Yeah, in Q4, I think he meant Q4 of last year. In Q4 of last year, they built a little over 1,000, and then in Q1 of this year, they built 2,200, so more than doubled, and then after that, 4,400. So basically a doubling effect again. If that trend continues, they should be on track to hit 25,000 by the end of the year. So that's a good sign of production ramp. But yeah, those First Mile events were fun. They didn't cost anything, and they let you check out the vehicle, and they had food and snacks, and they let reservation holders and certain people drive them around. They were great events, and there were employees there that we got to talk to, which was really fun. But They probably cost a lot of money. Like they have to reserve spaces and raceways, and they have a lot of employees there. And I noticed. I know it's a small difference, but like everyone that you checked in with at those events had like iPad Pros just as a like thing to sign like a waiver. They were just like, if you get injured here, you just it's a safety thing. Even those were like $1,000 iPads that they were using as document. Right, I know that's a small. It's not. I'm not saying that the iPads themselves are bankrupting Rivian. I'm just saying it shows what the spending is like behind the scenes. People just shouldn't buy iPads anyway, right? No, that's tech content. That's a different channel, but it showed that like they were spending a lot of money on those events, and that's probably not necessary, especially when the backlog is as long as it is. Rivian has done something that is pretty rare. Tesla hasn't really started doing this with the sexy lineup, at least. With the Cybertruck, they're still doing this. But with Rivian, you can put a reservation down, but you can't lock in the price anymore. So if you go to Rivian's website, which was broken for a couple weeks actually, just not because I was interested or anything. I was just curious. I liked going to the website to like spec out a Rivian. If you hit the reserve button, you don't configure anything. It just says reserve now, configure later. You just put down $1,000. If you hit start a reservation, it's just, put in your email and your phone number. It doesn't say like, do you want a red one or do you want a quad motor or a dual motor no configuration. It's just you put $1,000 down, and all that really does is tell Rivian that you're interested. It doesn't like lock in a price. It doesn't guarantee you a delivery date of anything. It's just they've had to basically turn off the configurator because they're so back ordered. They have so many people interested that there's just no point in locking in prices when inflation is the way it is. And I think they said on their website, like if you reserve one today, you probably won't get it until like end of 2023, which is like an 18-month wait at least. And that's probably a generous timeline. There's a good chance if you reserve a Rivian today, it won't be ready till 2024. So I love bringing this up because it appears in the Cybertruck video comments all the time. People are like, nope, Cybertruck needs 500-mile range because towing. You need to tow 500 miles. Therefore, they will not do a slow. And it's like, and yet Rivian's back-ordered for years. Ford is back-ordered for years. Both of them turn off their configurator. Neither of those trucks are offering 400 miles of range, and yet there's plenty of demand. There's no shortage of demand. So that's just kind of my point is like, it's the long-distance heavy payload pickup truck towers, they're going to be the people using diesel for the longest amount of time. Like EVs aren't going to cover that use case until the very end when we have such a surplus of batteries and we've ran out of demand where people aren't ordering enough EVs because the range isn't good enough. That's when they'll start making 400, 500-mile range pickup trucks. Until then, I just don't think there's much of a need or a point to. Rishabhan says, Drew, Rivian is letting go of their software engineers if you see LinkedIn. Okay, not a good sign. Well, I mean, letting go of anyone is not necessarily a good sign, but when your operating expenses are super high, I do understand why the software engineering would be cut first, because software engineering is not a side of the business that brings in revenue. The side of the business that brings in revenue is making the vehicle, ramping up production. Software is important, but I also think that the software on the Rivian's pretty good already. I mean, I don't know if I would say it's better than Tesla's yet, but if your focus is on staying afloat and staying profitable, then software, not having huge software updates to your car is not going to bankrupt the company. But if you keep paying people that aren't necessarily bringing in revenue, yeah, obviously it'd be nice if they could hire more software engineers, but I don't think Rivian has quite the same emphasis on self-driving or driver plus features that Tesla does. And I don't think they really need to be honest, especially if you're trying to position your company for adventure lifestyle and camping and that kind of thing. Autopilot, self-driving tech is not going to be the big reason people buy a Rivian. I don't think people are buying those trucks for the driver assistance features. It's cool that they have them, But if you're looking for off-roading and camping, you're not looking for a robo taxi essentially. Um, Oh, Pontus is saying, "How did your road trip go with the ice car? The trip you unfortunately didn't get your new car for, which you were hoping." Yeah, it went pretty fine. Obviously, no autopilot, no adaptive cruise control was pretty sucky, but because we know that we're going to pay the same amount no matter how long it takes, we're taking advantage of the fact that we have a gas car by um, driving quickly. I didn't go super fast over the speed limit, but like I basically set a record because my family and my friends have done this drive between where I live and where my parents live. Typically, it takes around 14 hours, and I did it in a little bit under 12, which was like a record. And I think the only reason I did it in under 12 is because I didn't stop to eat. We actually just didn't stop eating. My wife packed a lot of snacks and a lot of food in the car. So on this 12-hour drive, we stopped once. And I don't, we made great time, which was cool. We left pretty early in the morning and we still got here before the sun went down. So it was cool to make a good time on the road trip, but I don't have a desire to drive for 6 hours straight without stopping. That's not, that's not what I want, but I just figured, we can do it in the gas car and we're not going to be able to do it with the Tesla. So let's just enjoy it now while we have it. Because we know once we get our Tesla, we're going to have to stop several times to charge. But I'm not dreading that. I welcome that. After this long drive and sitting in the car for a long time and my butt getting sore and, getting just sick of just tiny little micro adjustments on the entire drive. Like, I'm totally fine if the next time we do this drive, it takes 15 hours because we'll save money, for one, by supercharging instead of paying for gas. And for two, on those stops, we'll get to get out of the car, use the bathroom, get some food, take a break. So the goal is, well, the gas car is not going to be as fun as a Tesla, but at least it can get great time. So let's utilize it to the best of its advantages. So yeah, we're still waiting on the car. Still have still no updates to post about at this point. No VINs assigned or anything, but road trip was fine. No major issues. Which, considering it's a 15-year-old car, I'm grateful that it didn't have any massive problems. Which I keep feeling like I'm chancing it every time I take it on a road trip. I'm like, please don't explode on me. Please don't. I hope something doesn't go wrong because it's aged pretty well so far. Anyway, that's too much gas car discussion. Um, Rivian just needs better software and battery technology. I think that's not. That shouldn't be the top priority. I wouldn't say anyone doesn't need that. Obviously, Tesla needs better software and battery technology. Everyone needs better software and battery technology, yeah. And Rivian's no exception, but I think that that's not the top priority. Like, what Rivian should be focusing on is lowering operating expenses and ramping up their vehicles so that they can turn a profit as quickly as possible. Once they're profitable, I think that their future is going to be a lot more secured, and that's when you can start focusing more on software and that kind of thing. But just having really, really good software, ultimately, all that does is make the product more desirable. And they have basically not literally, but they relatively have infinite demand. Rivian has far more demand than they have supply for. If you don't even let people configure your vehicles, yet you're delivering them, that's the difference with Tesla. Tesla does let you configure vehicles, and even though the wait is very long, you at least get to lock in your price. Tesla commits to like, okay, you will pay that price. We won't budge on that price when you put your deposit down. But Rivian's not even doing that. They let you have a refundable deposit, but you lock in nothing, which is why I don't really consider that there's not a ton of value in a Rivian reservation anymore. It's like, what are you locking in? Like what are you securing by putting it? Like with a Tesla, it's like, oh, you better put down a deposit now before the price hikes go up. But with Rivian, it's like, I mean, you could put a deposit down, but the prices can still go up. So, yeah. Uh, when will Legacy Auto switch to the direct-to-consumer method of sales? They can't because law. I don't believe that. I think they're just not trying very hard enough. I know that there's some weird laws saying that they have to use the dealer model, but if Tesla can fight it and Rivian can fight it and win, I think the Ford dealer, whether it's spinning it off into a separate entity or, coming up with your own custom delivery centers and stuff. Like, it can be done. I just don't think they are trying that hard. Um, Oof Dad says, I have no clue if Rivian will make it or not, but they are really slow on charging network, service network, aren't doing insurance, and who knows on autonomy. Well, I wouldn't say super slow. They've started building up the adventure network, and I get why they're not building out the adventure network super fast because they already have Electrify America to work off of. Um, but there's I think Electrify America probably gets a bit more flack than it deserves. Some people are just convinced that if you don't have a Tesla, there's no way you can do a road trip. Download apps like a Better Route Planner. Not a sponsor. I know it sounds like that. I have no affiliation with them. I've never talked to them, but there's an app for free that you can download on your phone just called a Better Route Planner, and it lets you select any vehicle you want and plug in. Here's where I am. Here's where I want to go, and I want to add these stops and that kind of thing. I plugged in a Kia EV6. As far as like electric vehicles that are tempting to me that aren't Teslas. If I had to not buy a Tesla, I would probably get a Kia EV6 just because of the price. You know, if price wasn't a factor, I would love to get a Rivian. Rivians seem awesome, and I love every time I've checked one out. It's been an absolute delight, but it's just too expensive. I just don't think I could afford it. Kia EV6 is more the kind of vehicle I could afford, and that vehicle I plugged in on a Better Route Planner, and even though I'm not driving in super populated areas, I drive through huge spans of nothing on the drive up to Washington. Even with the Kia EV6, it could actually get here faster than the Tesla Model 3 could, because it has fast charging capability up to 220 kilowatts, I believe, and it doesn't use any Tesla superchargers. It's just efficient enough, and it's got the range, and the price point's not bad. So I bet you could do this same drive with a Rivian. Obviously, I don't know your exact use case, but I disagree with the concept that like you can't do road trips with Electrify America. Kyle from Out of Spec has done road trips with Teslas and non-Teslas side by side, and he's gotten the non-Teslas to win. They will actually get to their destination faster than the Tesla will. You just have to pick a car with decent charging capability. But Electrify America is growing. They've got a lot of stations to choose from. I wouldn't say that we have to wait until the Adventure Network is like at thousands of charging stations. Like, no, you could do it with Electrify America. A lot of people obviously are. They're getting by with it. Let's see. My family hates the idea of stopping to charge an EV because it'll take 15 to 20 minutes. We spend 15 to 20 minutes every time we make a stop for restrooms or food. I know, it's fairly hypocritical. It always sounds like a drawback until you actually road trip with it, and then you're like, oh, actually, it's not that bad. It's not terrible. I don't Rishab. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. I'm sure I'm butchering it. But Rishab says battery and thermal management is must, as most big OEMs like Ford, Porsche, and GM have had a huge problem with battery replacements. Not sure it'll be solved through software. I haven't followed that. I know they've had some issues, but I mean, so has Tesla. Tesla's had to replace batteries that degraded too quickly. Chris from Dirty Tesla just did a video on that. A guy bought a Standard Range Plus Model 3 from 2019 and had battery degradation go below 80%. Well, it degraded the battery more than 20% within like the first 3 years of ownership. So Tesla had to replace his battery pack, and you don't get a warranty on that replacement battery pack, which some people were annoyed by. I haven't followed much of the battery replacement issues. Like, I'm sure they exist, but it's a percentage thing. Like, has it happened once or twice, or has it happened, if it's happening 10% of the time, that's a massive problem. If it happens 0.5% of the time, I wouldn't say that's a big, massive issue. It's possible, it's just a yield. It's like, how good can you get it? Ramping production will be the key. If they can get the production to scale, they will survive. Demand is there for any EV. Except the Bolt, it seems, Virgil. It seems like GM has struggled to sell the Bolt because I guess all the battery issues and the recalls and just the fact that it just doesn't look very cool has prevented people from buying it, because there's no reason to reduce the price on that vehicle unless you're having a hard time selling it. And I noticed when I looked up for Bolts available in my area, there were a ton available for same day delivery. You could order one and get it right away. I could probably go to my nearest Chevy dealer around here and buy a Bolt right now. they're in stock, and there's not much of a wait time on the Bolt. But other than that, yeah, I have a very hard time finding any Kia EV6s in stock. Teslas, of course, you have to wait months or years for. Same with Rivian. And for the most part, especially with electric trucks, Rivian, yeah, I agree. Rivian will not have a demand problem for a very, very long time. I mean, as far as reservations go, I guess they didn't garnish as many reservations as the F 150 Lightning or as many reservations as the Cybertruck per se, but I think they will eventually. Like a lot of people think that you hear about the number of reservations and then that's it. There's no more people ordering. It's like actually the more vehicles Rivian delivers to customers and the more people that are driving them around, the more people become aware of them and they kind of market themselves. Like butts and seats is always what sells vehicles the best. Is once there's a bunch of people with Rivians driving around in them, people start seeing them and they go, "Oh, that's a real thing. Oh, people actually buy it." And it drags more attention to the brand and that increases demand. So even if they ramp up production and they start building, 50,000, 100,000 a year, 200,000 a year, I still think when they have that many vehicles on the road, there's going to be plenty of people still wanting new ones. Hey, Peter Gregg, thanks for tuning in. Thumbs up. Okay. What are you doing with your current car? Keeping it, selling it, trading it in? I think we're going to hold on to it just for a little while because I've seen enough stories where, a lot of people take delivery of Teslas and then within the first couple weeks or even sometimes the first couple months, they have something go horribly wrong. Like I've become more active on Reddit lately, which is kind of dangerous, but also just kind of eye-opening because a lot of people with Teslas with bad stories love to just jump on Reddit. And there's been stories where people have 12-volt battery issues or battery pack go bad within the first couple months of ownership. So if something went horribly wrong with our car and we needed to drop it off at a service center for a while and we weren't going to have the Tesla for a couple weeks, it'd be good to have a backup car, of course. And we also think that there's people in our life that might need a car, not necessarily we're going to need it, but there's people that, like my parents visiting from out of town or friends coming from out of town, and they just need something to drive around while they're visiting, and just letting them borrow our old car because it's old and we don't really care that much about it. It's like, yeah, just use that, drive it around while you can. It's kind of a nice to have type thing. I think we'll hold on to it for a couple years if we find out that it's useless and it's just not worth keeping around. We might even non-op it so we don't have to pay for registration and insurance on it and it'll just kind of sit around. But if we find out that we just don't have any use for it or no one who's visiting uses it, then we'll sell it. But at least for the first year or so, we'll probably just keep it around. But I don't want to drive it. I don't want to have it around or use it for anything in particular. King of Florida says, so what EV would you buy if you were rich? If money was no object, probably a long-range Model X. That's my dream vehicle. I love the windshield. I love the Falcon Wing doors. I love the auto-presenting doors. I would specifically get either a 5 or a 7-seater. I don't care for the 6-seater because that second row doesn't fold down. And I would much rather have a vehicle where the second row can fold down so that me and my wife, if we go car camping or something, can lay it down. But I love the look of the yoke. I like the bigger display. I like ventilated seating and all that. So that's just, if money was no object, long-range X. But unfortunately, money is an object, and that vehicle is insanely expensive and way out of my price range. So that's okay. I'm very happy. I test drove the Model 3 last week and had a ball. That vehicle was incredible, and I was very happy with it. But, while me and my wife wanted the Model Y originally, we really found out that the main reason we wanted it was mostly just the ride height. Like, it's much easier to step into, whereas you have to kind of fall into the Model 3, which is a bit more uncomfortable, especially when you get older, where you're having older people sitting in your car, because sometimes we're driving around our grandparents or our older people in our family and they have to kind of step into the car. That's kind of annoying. It wasn't so much for the storage space. We weren't running into situations where like, we need enough space. We need a Model Y so we can fit all. It's like, we don't really move that much stuff around. We put like tennis rackets in the back of our car. And I even watched a few people using their Model 3 as kind of the family car. Like, you can fit your your baby stroller in the trunk. So even if we have kids in the future, I think we'd be fine with the Model 3. Obviously, I don't deny that a Model Y is more practical and it is far more convenient. I acknowledge that. I just also acknowledge that I don't know if I would say it's $20,000 better than the Model 3. That's going to be up to you, but to me, if it's like, okay, you just have to step into the car and be a little bit more uncomfortable when getting out of it, and you got to be a little bit more creative with how you store cargo in the back, but I get to keep $20,000. I'll take the $20,000. I could invest that in stock and watch it grow. $20,000 in cash is not just cash. That's potential money that can grow over the course of your life. So to me, it's a money argument to go with the 3, not so much the 3 is better. But also, I want to try the lithium iron phosphate battery because I think there's a really good chance we're going to hold on to this vehicle for a long, long time. Unless my lifestyle drastically changes. I don't think it will, but if I don't know, if I suddenly got really into, I don't know, like off-roading or camping, or if I got suddenly into moving around, I don't know, furniture or something. I don't know what my lifestyle could change. I don't think kids would necessarily warrant upgrading the whole car, but um, my wife sometimes talks about it. Like she's like, "Oh, maybe one day when we get a Model Y." And I was like, "Oh, so you want to upgrade to the Model Y in the future?" She's like, "No, we'll keep the 3. We'll have a Model Y as well." So she like it's daydreaming. We're not talking about in the next 2 years. It might be the next like 5 or 10 years. Her logic, I think, is to wait until the Model Y has ramped up so heavily and that there's no demand backlog and Tesla actually starts lowering prices again and you can get one for under 50K. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but that's what she's hoping for. I don't think she's interested in ever dropping 60, 70 grand on a Model Y, but um, still just that battery chemistry being a higher cycle life and being able to charge it to 100% regularly. I want to see how that ages. I think that'll be a really cool car to own over the long haul. So I'm still very excited for it, and sometimes I wake up and forget, like, oh yeah, that could happen next month. It probably won't, but it could, and that's just kind of a trippy thing to think about. Anyway, sorry, I get sidetracked with my own dreams sometimes. King of Florida says I see a lot of bolts. Yeah, I don't see too many out here, but I usually see a couple back home. Jeep Gladiator EV would be a great competitor against the Rivian R1T. Yeah, I wonder how that would compare. I don't think it's a particularly efficient design, but I guess neither is the Rivian. I just think they've just figured out how to make like a Swiss Army knife of a vehicle. It's a pickup truck. It's not too big. I love the size of the Rivian because I'm not really a fan of driving huge pickup trucks. Like the gooseneck, I think it's called the gooseneck approach to the tailgate, so that when you lower it, you actually have more like a 7-foot bed, and then when you fold it up, it's a more compact, like Tacoma sized truck, a little bit bigger than a Tacoma, but you've got the software there. I love the emphasis on the screens. The gear tunnel's super practical. The frunk space is huge, and you also have a vehicle that's faster than a Model 3 performance. 0 to 60 in 3.0 seconds, like a 3-second flat acceleration, all-wheel drive. Like you've got the performance aspect, you've got the handling aspect, you've got great range, you've got fast. Like they just have such a Swiss Army knife of a product that yeah, I'm not convinced demand is going to be an issue for Rivian for at least 5 years. Even though it's not particularly close to the size or the functionality of a traditional pickup truck like an F-150, it's a bit smaller than that. I still think just Rivian's going to inspire a wave of people to either get trucks that haven't gotten trucks before because now they realize how efficient they can be, or there's people that realize they don't need a truck as big as an F-150 and they would rather just have a smart, futuristic truck like the Rivian. Um, let's see. I love my Model X 5-seater. Yeah, I've checked out a couple Model X's in my day. Unfortunately, I still have not been able to check out a refreshed Model X. I almost did a couple times, but plans fell through. But that's still my dream vehicle. It's probably better that I don't check one out because it'll just make me want to buy one and I can't afford it. So it's like, why bother looking at something that you can't afford? But yeah, if money was no object, I'm honestly tied kind of between long range Model X and the R1S. I think the R1S is a pretty sweet vehicle. Um, I've heard mixed things. Like some people get the Model X and really don't care for the Falcon doors, and other people get them and love them, and they're like, yeah, I want this SUV over any other SUV because of how great these doors are. So I don't really know where I would fall on it. I would have to try one out for like a month and see how it fits into my lifestyle. But ultimately, like right now, it's just me and my wife driving around, and we don't have usually anyone else in the car. So buying a Model Y for an extra 20 grand or buying a Model X for 100, what is it now? I think it's 115 grand. Oh my God. That's insane. Oh, I could probably buy, yeah, I'd be close to being able to afford two Model Ys for the price of one Model X. That's pretty insane. That's that's pretty mind-boggling. But yeah, the R1S would be cheaper. And Rivian has said they have plans on using lithium iron phosphate on the shorter range Rivian, which I'm a big fan of LFP. So it's probably more likely that, I don't think my income will change that drastically. But if my channels like took off and got way more views than they do right now, and I suddenly was making way more money, I would probably be able to afford an R1S before I could afford a Model X. And seven-seater by default and folded down, it's like a huge amount of space in the back. It's like a proper full-size SUV. Um, yeah, like that's a solid vehicle. If you could get a seven-seater SUV with lithium iron phosphate, that would be pretty sweet. So we'll see if Rivian can actually bring that to market. But yeah, I would be tempted. Alpha agrees with me. He'd also get a Model X if he could. I'd argue most people don't need a Model Y. Well, need is a tricky word, but yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people probably could. I would argue most people don't need a long range Model 3, but we disagree on that one, I think. We've had our Model Y 2 years and 28,000 miles today. Easier to go to California than ND, North Dakota, I think is what that is. Sorry, I forget the names, the initials. Yeah, the 12-volt batteries there to power legacy components like heated lights. Sorry, headlights, not heated lights. Suppliers can make them at volume for 12 volts, so EVs have to have 12 volts to utilize. Yeah, no, the 12-volt thing just makes too much sense. It would be way too complicated. Um, hey, Mr. Flyboy, welcome to the stream. It's your boy. So consistent every stream. He's got to tune in. It's your boy. Any news on the new tax credits for EVs in the States? So it's not passed into law yet. But honestly, I've talked to several people that say it has a good chance of being passed. I'm not totally convinced. I think that it's way too generous of a tax credit because there's no manufacturing cap on it. It's literally $7,500 on every new EV, $4,000 on used EVs, which is honestly quite big for the used market. And that's supposed to last 10 years. The amount of taxes that people will not have to pay for that amount of time, if you consider how many EVs are going to be sold in the next 10 years, oh my God, that's going to be billions of dollars probably that the federal government is missing out on. So it just sounds a little too good to be true, I guess is my logic. And I don't have a lot of faith in our government doing the right thing. I already don't think the new tax credit is really the right thing to do. The smarter thing to do would be to provide tax cuts to domestic battery production. That way EVs actually get cheaper, because right now our biggest problem preventing EV adoption is not with affordability of EVs. The big problem is availability. People can't get enough of these cars. We have wait times that are too long, and we have backlogs that last years for so many EVs. So it's not that people aren't willing to pay for them or that the prices are too high. It's just that we can't build enough of them. So I would say the government should work on making it easier to build more of these things. If you care about the environment, then just lower the income tax and lower the property tax on companies that want to build batteries local, build batteries in the US. Anybody who wants to do that, provide them massive tax breaks and just make it really, really cheap and really, really easy for them to do that. That way EVs will naturally become cheaper instead of artificially become cheaper. That would be the right thing to do. So, but they're not doing that. So that's why I'm not totally convinced this tax credit is going to pass. And I've thought about it a little while. I was like, should I delay my Model 3 to take advantage of the tax credit and try to take delivery of it next year? You know, I would say yes if I knew when my actual delivery date was going to be. Like if I get text in an hour that says your Model 3 is ready, you got to pick it up soon, I would totally pick it up. I don't care if I could get $7,500 tax credit next year. I just want the car. I've been waiting so dang long, and I'm so tired of waiting. And but I would change my answer if I found out that, well, Drew, your Model 3 isn't going to be delivered until December. If it's like, okay, if pushing back the delivery date like 3 weeks means I get the tax credit, then sure, I'll wait 3 weeks. But I don't have any guarantee of that. Like, if I change my order or delay my delivery and it ends up taking till April of next year, then no, that's way too long. I don't want to wait that long. So, yeah, that's the tricky part about waiting. But I think at this point, unless it's December, I would rather just take the car now. I don't really care about the tax credit. I'm just tired of waiting. But if December rolls around, I'll think about delaying my order just because I'm like, and the tax credit passes, I should also say. If it's December and the tax credit hasn't passed, then I wouldn't delay delivery. I'm curious to see what Tesla insurance would quote me, but not they're available in Michigan yet. Well, you've got some time, but yeah, you hopefully tax. I know they want to launch insurance everywhere. It's just a matter of time. Ryan Fraley says, "What Model 3 are you getting?" It's a white exterior, white interior, 18-inch aero wheel Model 3 rear-wheel drive. Basically, the cheapest Tesla they make. Plus the white interior. That's the only add-on we came up with. But if I needed to delay delivery, I could easily switch it back to the black interior, and I believe they would honor my price. That they would honor the old pricing that I locked in, and then if the law passes, I could get $7,500 tax credit back, which is kind of nice financially. But I wouldn't say like I'm not interested in a car unless I can get the tax credit and that kind of thing. In other words, the tax credits won't help us that much. I think they will help people that are ordering at today's pricing. If the tax credit gets approved, I think there's a good chance Tesla will raise their prices quite substantially because they know there's going to be a big influx of demand of people ordering Teslas. So the only thing tax credits usually help with is making a vehicle have more demand, but demand is plenty high already. We don't need more demand, so that's why I think Tesla's not going to do much about it. I don't think they're going to lower prices to take advantage of the tax credit because, again, all that would do is increase orders, which they don't need. That's not necessary. So if companies are willing to sell their EVs at a loss, the tax credit's great because they won't raise their prices. So like the Bolt, GM is losing money on basically every Bolt they sell, and if they get the tax credit back, that would be a 250-mile range EV that's under $20,000. Pretty incredible value after incentives, of course. Ridiculous to encourage demand without encouraging mining and refining the need for minerals. Yeah, that's true. There needs to be better measures in place to ensure battery recycling. I don't know. I mean, most people I know of that are in the battery space are pretty serious about battery recycling. Tesla's already started recycling batteries, and Redwood Materials is already, I think, trailing towards profitability. So it's not like a big secret. And it's also just not a bad financial move. Recycling is a great idea because it's the easiest way to have access to valuable mineral ore that you can melt down and turn into more batteries. It's way cheaper to just use old batteries to recycle and convert into new batteries than it is to try to mine all those materials out of the ground. So even from a purely financial business standpoint, it makes a ton of sense to recycle batteries. So I don't know if there's a big EV brand out there that's not recycling batteries, but anyone that thinks that when EVs get old and done, people just take them out and throw them in landfills or they just scrap them, that's typically not what's happening. So I don't know if there needs to be better. I mean, GM did take the EV1 and smash those, but I doubt they would ever do that again. Recycling will be automatic. Old batteries. Yeah, Virgil answered the question already. Ryan says, "You thinking of bumping up to long range?" Not really. We talked about it. My wife and I kind of had a discussion when we were driving up here. We were like, maybe if it's not ready by a certain point, is it worth opting for it? And we were just like, it's a lot. It's like it would be $6,000 more, and I don't. It's the exact same car at the end of the day. I mean, it would be faster, but I don't care about acceleration, and it would be all-wheel drive, but we don't drive in the snow ever, and we don't go off road, and it's just the exact same size. So just it basically just be paying a premium for faster charging, and I guess longer range, but we wouldn't utilize the longer range anyway. I compared the long range to the rear wheel drive on a better route planner, and the difference in travel time is about 30 minutes. So a couple times a year, I would save 30 minutes on a road trip, but I'll be out $5,000, $6,000. Eh, yeah, it'd be one thing if it like confirmed that we would get the car sooner, but it really doesn't. It's just kind of a theory. Like maybe it would move us up in line, but who knows? Maybe it would push us back in line. I don't know. So my wife basically explained it in a way of we want like the cheapest version of whatever model we buy. If we get the Model 3, we want the cheapest Model 3. If we get the Model Y, we want the cheapest Model Y. Um, if we ever got a Rivian, we'd want the cheapest Rivian. We just feel like that's where the most amount of value is, not so much on the add-ons or the upgrades and stuff. So we talked about it, but it doesn't really seem worth it to us. I think our main discussion was like if by happenstance Tesla decided to cancel the Model 3 rear-wheel drive while we had an order, and they were like, sorry, you can't buy that model anymore. If we were spending an additional 6,000, we would probably rather just go all the way to the Model Y because that's kind of what we wanted in the first place. It's like if we're going to be spending that kind of money, we might as well just go all the way. But I don't think we're that interested in compromising on the going with like a middle tier Model 3. Let's see. You only get the orange headlight when someone mentions you. You don't even need the @ I just do it to indicate the mention. Oh, I see. He's explaining YouTube chat. I'll be less than 1/62 of the way complete. Yeah, really. We need more incentives to accelerate current production plans, like getting another gigafactory in the U.S., getting Ultium platform in place faster to accelerate Honda and GM. Demand for EVs is way outpacing supply. Yeah, I would agree with that. It just doesn't seem like the government does. They don't understand. This is a production problem, not a demand problem. Stop trying to convince people to buy EVs. We've got that figured out. The YouTubers and the EV owners will take care of the demand. We're so far away from having a demand problem. Tesla has not spent a penny on advertising and has become the most valuable automaker in the world. So I think that's proof of just make a good EV, people will buy it. Like make a Rivian, make a Aptera, make a Mach-E. You don't need to spend money advertising those things. People will buy them. Excuse me. You don't need the range. I do, unfortunately. No, that's what I mean. Just like how you say most people don't need a Model Y, I'd say most people don't need the range. You think there will be options for the Cybertruck or just one battery range? Ooh, we're getting into Cybertruck subjects. Yeah, I am convinced this will be like the most minimalistic, simplified vehicle Tesla's ever built. It's going to be one color option. I think it'll only have one choice of tires, one interior color, one battery size. I think there will be almost no options other than like, do you want full self-driving or not? That's going to be like the one option. And that can be done via software, so they don't have to do anything with it. That's my guess. Just based on how simple it is on the website, and it used to have 3 trims, and then they got rid of that. And now, considering it's become so common for F-150 Lightning and Rivian, it's just all-wheel drive on electric pickup trucks is so standard. It's pretty likely that the single motor will be scrapped, and demand is so high that I think the price will be up there that they can easily justify doing a quad-motor powertrain on every single truck. So my guess is that, yeah, there will basically be no options. Just 300-mile range, rear-wheel steering, one color. You can wrap it any color you want. You can wrap it whatever you feel like. Um, a few days ago, I just saw my first Rivian, whereas I saw dozens of Teslas daily. Well, yeah, that makes sense. The Tesla's been around for a lot longer, but yeah, I'm glad you saw a Rivian. Um, we have a political party who doesn't believe the climate crisis is real, and the other doesn't have the urgency to call out the denialists. I don't see an issue in calling out the denialists when demand is far outpacing supply. It's like the denialists. There will always be stupid people. There's no limit to how many dumb people the world will have. They'll still be there. If they were the ones preventing us from accelerating the EV transition, I would say there's more urgency to address the denialists. But right now, it's like it's like crazy people that think the Earth is flat. It's like, okay, there's no reasoning with those people. Like, what are you going to try to do? Talk to them? If they've reached a conclusion that absurd, then there's no point in arguing with them. There's like, what are you gonna do? They're just gonna choose to be stupid, and there will always be stupid people, unfortunately. So I wouldn't worry about the denialists that much. Um, just don't expect politicians to solve any of your problems, regardless of which party it is. I'm not really happy with any of them. Um, Alpha says, I'm still convinced Cybertruck won't be great for long distance heavy towing. I don't think any EV will be good at that for years because of the manufacturing requirements of it. It's a very simple equation. It's not a big mystery. The only way to make an EV good at long distance towing is to pack a massive battery pack in it. And it's just very obvious that when you're a young EV startup and you're trying to ramp up production, when you have way more demand than there is supply for, you don't start with a vehicle with a 200 kilowatt hour battery pack. That's the Hummer, and that's why they build so few Hummers. If you're actually serious about building a lot of vehicles and trying to address the ever-growing demand backlog, you focus on building as many vehicles as possible, and the best way to do that is to use fewer cells per truck. So because Ford and Rivian has proven that there's a ton of demand for electric trucks that have 300 miles of range or less, they've got no demand problem. I don't see why Cybertruck is suddenly going to say, like, no, we need to have way better range than the competition. It's like, why? They don't do that with Lucid. Lucid has way better range than Tesla. Tesla doesn't seem to care. They're not doing anything about it. Tesla's not going like, oh man, how do we figure out how to beat Lucid on range? Like, they're like, nah, whatever. Plaid Model S goes 350 miles. That's fine. Model Y goes 330 miles. That's fine. Like, Tesla's figured out that range is not always the most important thing. And especially at this point in the EV transition, it doesn't matter. So, I hate to break it to you, but long distance heavy towing isn't as common as you may think. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying there's plenty of people buying these trucks that don't care that it's not going to be great at long distance towing. They're like, I don't do that very much. You know, I don't think Rivian would have a 2-year backlog, or Ford would have a 2-year backlog in the F-150 Lightning if every single person who bought a pickup truck did long distance towing. They don't. That's not what pickup trucks mostly do. They exist, it happens, but it's not most of them. In fact, I can confidently say most pickup trucks I see are towing nothing. So, again, when demand starts dwindling and we have a lack of people ordering trucks, and Rivian and Ford figure out that, oh, people aren't buying our truck because the range isn't very good, then they'll start building trucks with longer range. But as long as that's not a thing, then there's no reason to make a truck with 500 miles. Akira Moraguchi, thank you for tuning in. He says, late to the chat here, but we can fit a double stroller in the back of a Model 3. Works great as a family car. Kids need to stop often on road trips anyway. Yeah. No, I've watched lots of videos of people doing that. So I think that there's advantages, of course, to having a crossover for a family with car seats and strollers and stuff. But to say that a Model 3 can't do that, yeah, I disagree. I think it can. I think it can be a great vehicle. Jonathan said layoffs. Yikes. Are they not selling well enough? No, they just have very high operating expenses, which is natural for an EV startup. Tesla did too. But I think Rivian's making the right call by laying off their workforce, 6% of their workforce, because that lowers their operating expenses, which means you get closer to profitability faster. I see Teslas in my small town, so the lack of charges clearly isn't an impediment. No, I don't think it is either. If you're complaining about a lack of chargers, that implies that you think demand is too low, which it isn't. Cybertruck will be the best EV for long distance towing, but ICE will still be better than that. For the first few years, yes. As long as we have a demand backlog, I think not semi, sorry. I think diesel trucks and basically gas pickups will still be better at long distance towing until we have more batteries than, you know, cars that we can deliver on. Once there's, everybody who wanted an EV got one, and there's a very few percentage of people that are still choosing to buy gas cars and gas trucks. That's when the EVs will be like, okay, that's fine. Half the trucks I see have a heavy camper attached, but that's just me. Yeah, that might just be you. A Tesla is workable where I live. You just need an ice as a safety blanket. Even if I got a Tesla, I'm not getting rid of my MDX until it breaks down and doesn't run, which would be forever. All right, well, fair enough. As long as you can charge from home, I don't think it's that big a deal. I'm still waiting to see an electric minivan. Who will be first, or is there already one? VW ID Bus is basically an electric minivan, but that's not in the United States. But as far as like announced electric vans, I think VW is the closest. Canoe is kind of a minivan. Some people might refer to it as that. It's not, it's not a full-size van. They call it a lifestyle vehicle, and they have a van version of it, but it's more for delivery purposes, not like a family van and that kind of thing. We are floating in the middle of nowhere. Where? Where are you floating? But I'm glad, Akira. I'm glad that the Model 3 works as a great family car. I would like to try one if we ever expand our family in the future. I'd like to just try to stay content with the Model 3 because, like, I want to encourage more, especially during the recession, like trying to live with less and trying to live more within your means. And, especially during economic downturns, the people that get hit the hardest are the ones with the most amount of debt, which is why I didn't want to take a loan out on the Model 3. We wanted to pay for it in cash. And we're very fortunate, very blessed, and thankful for you guys supporting the channel so that we can do that. And if it's possible for you to do it, I think you should, even if you think, well, the car holds its value and I can get a lot nicer car if I get into some debt over it. But, I just think that with the economy going the way it is, it's not a great idea to accrue debt because it encourages the likelihood that you might not be able to pay it off. Oh, yes, our planet is floating in the middle of nowhere. Good point. Rivian could make an R1V once they get their production sorted. Well, they're already making delivery vans for Amazon. I feel like they could easily retrofit those vans to be something more residential grade, something that would be good for camping or YouTubers and just have something to drive around in. I don't think the range is very high though, but I heard they're using lithium iron phosphate on the vans, which is pretty cool. Maybe one of your vids blows up into the millions and you can cash pay for a plaid. I would never buy a plaid even if I had billions of dollars. I just do not care about acceleration. I floored it in the Model 3 long range dual motor that we test drove last week, and just that acceleration feeling is I get why some people like it, but I just do not care for it. It just makes me uncomfortable. I wanted to show off how fast it was to my friends and family that were checking out the car as we were test driving it because they'd never been in a Tesla before. So I was like, well, do you want to feel the acceleration? They're like, yeah, I want to see how fast it would go. But if I was just by myself, I would never go that fast. 0 to 60 in, I think it's 4.2 seconds on that model. That feeling of inertia and the blood going to the back of my face, it just makes me feel nervous and scared, and I'm just not that kind of driver. I just don't drive like that, and I don't enjoy that type of driving. So I'm actually happy and grateful that I got like the slowest Tesla I possibly could. I got like the slow one, which I'm perfectly fine with. And plaid is less efficient. You're carrying around extra motors, and that consumes more energy. So I care far more about efficiency over acceleration. So no need for plaid ever, even if I was a billionaire. I want Rivian to succeed because it's good for my state economy. Well, yeah, I mean, I want Rivian to succeed because I think they've made a solid product, and I want as many people on Earth to enjoy that product as possible because they put a lot of work into it, and I think they made a really solid truck, and I think a lot of people would enjoy it. And the more that company succeeds and the more growth they experience, then the more people will get to enjoy that product. I enjoy driving like it's NASCAR or F1. Okay, then you can enjoy your acceleration then. Accord Touring is 5.50 to 60, and that threw me into my seat when I test drove that. Yeah, my Model 3 will be 0 to 60 in 5.8 seconds, and I intentionally will never floor it just because I know that's worse for your tires, and I don't want to replace my tires prematurely. Mersey says, when does the R1S start deliveries? Last I checked was end of summer. So I've seen a few people. I haven't seen like a confirmed like post about it, but I've seen sightings of R1Ss that don't have manufacturer plates on them. I think my friend Mike, I don't know if he's still here in the stream, but my friend Mike sent me a picture a while back of an R1S he saw, and it had customer plates. But I haven't seen someone on Reddit say like, "Hey, I took my delivery of an R1S," and there's a very active Rivian subreddit, so I'm pretty sure we would get confirmation once official customer deliveries have begun. I think that the ones that we're spotting so far are probably employees. So they're not manufacturer plates, and they get customer plates, but they're not, outside of the company quite yet. Um, but it should be in the next couple months, I hope. Yeah, end of summer is almost here. Well, with the heat wave going on, end of summer will probably be around November or something. They need to update the Cybertruck section on the website. Tired of seeing that prototype on there. Yes, I'm totally with you, King of Florida. They need to change expectations sooner rather than later. I think that Tesla's waiting way too long to update people on the Cybertruck, and I know a lot of you disagree with me, but I'm very convinced that it's going to be an extremely expensive truck, and I think they're going to compromise on the range. It's not going to be 500 miles, and they're probably just going to do quad motor for several years. So if that's true, I could be wrong, but if that's true, I think they should post about that and make that clear so that people don't keep waiting for this truck thinking that it's going to be $40,000, $50,000, or thinking that they're going to get a 500-mile range truck for 70 grand. If that expectation's all thrown off, it's better to just rip the band-aid and say, sorry, we're not doing that. Here's what the actual specs are. Get those specs out as soon as you can, because you don't want those false expectations lingering for too long. We'll be quite impressed with them if they start delivery before Q4. Yeah, I think they will. This is kind of what was happening with the R1Ts originally. I know you stated your interest with Aptera. Would you be willing to check it out in person at one of the events they've been regularly showing up at? Yeah, it would. It would be so much easier if I had my Tesla. If I had my Model 3, it would be pretty affordable and pretty easy to just drive around. But with gas the way it is, it would just feel weird to spend $120 on gas to do an EV video. Like the money the video would make on the Aptera would not even cover the gas it would take to drive to one of their events. Unfortunately, they haven't done a event. They haven't done an event very close to me yet. So if I had a Model 3, I could easily just drive down to San Diego or wherever their events are. But yeah, I've thought about it, but it just kind of means I have to drive my gas car more, which I don't really feel like doing. But yeah, I want to check. It's kind of fun to check it out in person, but at the same time, they're not building production models yet. So even if I check out the prototype, it's probably unfinished, and little things I point out are like, well, it doesn't matter, it's a prototype. So I'd like to check out one of their production models when that's coming out. Any thoughts on Aptera? I saw your vid on the Tesla Charge Connector. Yeah, I love Aptera. That's still my favorite EV startup right now, just because they've made a vehicle that I could actually buy. I love Rivian, but I don't think I'll ever be able to afford one, whereas Aptera is just super affordable and super efficient. I love the efficiency of it. So there's a good chance that if Aptera makes it to market, we'll be able to get one. But we just I just gotta wait and see. I have no real updates for you. I actually have a bit of a hypothetical video on Aptera I'm working on, but I want to save that for another day. I'll save the subject, but I think that the addressable market for the Aptera is bigger than people think. Essentially, that's my little teaser. But yeah, I think it would be the best selling three wheeler in the world by far. Mike says there was an R1T on the side of the highway the other day with a ticket fine stuck on the back window. R1Ts are starting to flood the Bay Area with prototype R1Ss being seen once in a while. Yeah, I follow the subreddit, and there's a lot of people seeing pictures of them. Not with the prototype wrap either. Someone just posted a picture of a Red Canyon R1S, which was pretty cool. I was just looking at it the other day. It's a good look. I like the Red Canyon color. Man, there's too many posts. I can't find it, but still. I love the design, by the way. I love the exterior of both the R1T and the R1S. They're both real good looking. Huh, okay. I'll look for it later. Whatever happened to the announced 25K Tesla? Well, they never quite unveiled it, but I'm guessing the whole idea has been scrapped based on how Tesla responded to the question on not the last earnings call, but I think the one before it. The earnings call we had back in January, someone was like, any updates on the $25,000 car? And they basically said, you're asking the wrong question. Like, what we're targeting is the lowest cost per mile vehicle possible. And we think the lowest cost per mile vehicle is a robotaxi. Like, you won't have to buy the car because it'll be cheaper to just ride in it. It'll be so cheap to build the robotaxi and ride in it that you won't even buy a car anymore because of how little cents per mile it takes. And I don't really subscribe to that idea. I think people want to own cars, and I don't think that robotaxis would change people's desire for wanting to own trucks and SUVs. And I think people use cars for a lot more than transport, and that's why there's demand for them. So I don't really believe that concept, but I think that's their logic towards it. They're like, we want to build a super duper cheap car and make it a robotaxi, and then riding in that robotaxi is so cheap that there's no point in buying a $25,000 car and that kind of thing. I want to see Tech Racks drop test a Cybertruck. Would be kind of interesting to see how the exoskeleton morphs and moves around. Hot take. People are spending less, making it seem like there's a recession, but actually people are saving up to buy an EV. That'd be funny. I guess there might be some logic to that. People are dropping all their money on other things, so they're spending less on different things. People didn't do their research, and I can tell when I see them driving a Buick. I saw the Aptera at a show in LA, and it's pretty big, much larger in person. That's cool. Yeah, the dimensions of it are kind of surprising when you look it up. Which is funny because every time we talk about Aptera, everyone says it's too dangerous, it's too small, and you're going to get crushed, and there's no crumple zone, and it's not good in an accident. And then at the same time, the general rule of thumb is like the bigger vehicle you're in, the more safe you are. You know, like driving in a big pickup truck, you're a lot more safe than driving in a smart car. And people complain that the Aptera is too wide, but then say that it's so small that it's dangerous. And it's like, well, you can't pick both of those arguments. And it's not like, I mean, it's light for an EV, but for an average car on the road, it's not super light. It's 2,000 pounds, and it's wider. Its wheelbase is wider than a Cybertruck. So yeah, I'm sure it's bigger in person than people expect, but that helps it. I think that makes it more safe because you just basically have more room to crumple during an accident, during a collision. And they're going to put airbags in it, and they're going to crash test it and everything. So I feel like it's going to be safer than people assume. They just look at an Aptera and think, oh, that's weird looking, it must be dangerous, without even thinking much about it. Like, well, why are motorcycles dangerous, and why is the Aptera like a motorcycle? Other than the fact that, okay, it doesn't have four wheels, that doesn't suddenly make it the most dangerous vehicle in the world. I want Aptera to make a 100-mile range version to use for commuting. They probably could, huh? With a 10 kilowatt hour battery pack in there? Yeah, that'd be pretty cheap. I'm not happy with the whole idea of full self-driving. It isn't workable anytime soon. I'd rather see more electric public transportation, namely better rail. Well, Tesla can't do anything about that, but yeah, I don't really follow the idea of level 4 or level 5 autonomy. I'm As more and more time goes on and Tesla keeps pushing out deadlines, I'm more and more convinced that level 5 will never happen. But I am in favor of level 3. Basically, I think Tesla has the best driver assistance features, and I love their driver assistance capability, and I want to see it grow and get better. But I don't have much faith or much hope in driver replacement features. I don't think I've seen Tesla get any closer to that because liability wise, they still assume nothing. They won't take responsibility for anything the car does. If they start doing that, then I would say we're getting closer to level 5, but they haven't done that. So, um, at least with Toyota and Honda, you can argue for the purchase based on reliability. Yeah, I guess you could. It's just everyone has these weird associations. I see certain research groups that say this brand is reliable, and then a different group say actually this brand sucks. And it's like you just get different answers all the time. Aptera sounds like a helicopter. Yeah, it almost looks like one. Aptera almost looks like a plane more so than it does a car. Um, Driving a truck is hard. I don't like managing so much mass. Me neither. I drove a car a couple. Sorry, a big pickup truck a couple weeks ago, and I hated it. It was annoying. Cam 3087 says I was at the first mile event. You probably didn't hear how an employee rolled the truck doing donuts after the event was over. Huh. No, I didn't hear that. That's funny though. They was trying to recreate tank mode, I think. They're trying to make tank mode a reality because they're upset that that was canceled. Um, let's see. Oh, I read that one. My family's been cramming into a Buick sedan for road trips now. Nobody's comfortable, but it's better than 13 miles per gallon. Oof. Buick. I don't know anyone. I don't think I know a single person with a Buick now that I think of it. Yeah. No, I genuinely can't think of one person in my life that has one. is that is that a good thing? Should I be glad? But anyway. How about a better question for earnings calls is not when will Cybertruck deliver, but when and how will configs and prices be revealed? That would be a good question. I would love to ask how many 2170 Model Ys they're building versus 4680 Model Ys, but the truth is, like, sometimes they announce things during earnings calls, but the more I think about the the more I think about how they answer the good questions, the more I realize they're probably just not going to give us any. Like, there's great questions on the earnings calls. That doesn't mean they're going to answer them. So I'm kind of convinced that like there's really no point in answering or taking questions on those calls. I feel like they do it to be polite, but they never get very specific. It's always like, how are you going to manage rising supply costs? We'll be careful. Next question. What if demand goes down? Okay, then we'll adjust accordingly, but we have no demand problem. We've never had a demand problem. Okay, but what if demand really go? It's like it's just such a waste of time. You know, occasionally they slip in some interesting info, but the last few earnings calls have just had pretty dumb questions, and even the good questions don't get answered. So I'm like, why even bother with this stuff? Um, Apparently, the UK government wants to make it legal to take your eyes off the road soon on the motorway if you have self-driving software, but they haven't said anything about how liability will work. Yeah, that's a big decision for the automaker because it could potentially be very, very expensive if their code isn't very good. So, yeah, it's a big decision, but it would say a lot about their confidence in the system. I think that would be a big impact in the market if they were like, we're so confident in our software that if our software causes a crash, we will assume liability. And they're going to have to do that if they do level 4 and level 5 because there won't be a person to take over. So you can't say you're responsible for what happens to the car, but you're not in the car. And the car's driving completely by itself and you can't take over. Like, they're not going to do that. So once they start assuming liability in even limited forms and say, okay, maybe when you're on the highway using autopilot, you don't have to pay attention, but you have to take over once you leave the highway. And it's your responsibility to know when you're off the highway. You know, you can't fall asleep, but you can take your eyes off the road, or at least the nagging could go down a bit. That would at least be something in the right direction. If they were like, you only have to check in on the car every 5 minutes instead of every 30 seconds. Like you only have to grab the wheel or check the road, or, and you know, it tells you, like the screen changes or it makes a sound when you take the off ramp, and it's like, okay, now you have to pay attention. If we started getting to that state, it would feel a lot closer to me, but we're not anywhere close to that. Just ask Tesla a math question during shareholder call would be much more productive than some of the questions brought up there. Tesla, I was trying to do some carpet in my bedroom. I'm trying to figure out how much surface area I need in here. And they got a calculator on their end and they do the math. Do you think Tesla will ever add CarPlay? If so, by when do you think we'll finally get it? I think they asked about it and they just weren't interested in the idea, but I do think eventually they will get it. It's a matter of time. Probably if demand starts dwindling, they'll start caving on what their most desirable features are. And they've got to have some customer research in certain areas. Like maybe when Elon is gone, I think that Tesla will become a lot more strategic and a lot more safe and a lot less risky of a company. Once Elon is no longer at the company, they'll probably be like, okay, we ran a poll and most of our data says that a lot of people would consider buying a Tesla if we added CarPlay. So let's add CarPlay and then sales will go up. You know, that I could see that happening, but probably not in the near future. I don't think in the next 3 years or 5 years. The new version of CarPlay could take over the entire Tesla display, which is kind of cool. But even then, from the interviews I've seen, Tesla doesn't seem to want to add it. Bailey Barnes says, I want a Rivian so bad, but sadly no CarPlay, and I have to have it for work. Really? For work, you need CarPlay. That's impressive. I wonder why. But yeah, I'm not in there with CarPlay, but I'm there with... you could like add CarPlay to your car, can't you? You could like... There's screens that run CarPlay that you could like affix to the Rivian dash. So it's like, hey, CarPlay, you know, that kind of thing. I'd ask Tesla, what's a question? I think it's a desire for information. Request to release information on something like that. I'm basically, right now I'm in Washington. I live in California. We're just visiting friends and family. But how would CarPlay work on Teslas when the car needs to know the navigation route to drive itself? Yeah, that would be the problem. I think CarPlay would have to accommodate for those features. That's what the enhanced version of CarPlay is supposed to be. It's supposed to bake in your speed and your driver assist features, and it like everything you use the car for has to be baked into the CarPlay mode. So it would take a lot of software optimization. It wouldn't technically be impossible, but it would just be using Apple Maps to power it instead of Google Maps, I guess. Maybe navigate on autopilot wouldn't work on CarPlay or something. I don't know, but it would definitely be a weird mesh of software that you'd have to try to get just right. Mersey says you can modify CarPlay to any car technically. Yeah. I'm just trying to figure out like what does it need CarPlay for work? Is it just you really want CarPlay? But new CarPlay updates that Apple showed at Dub look amazing. Yeah, I want to see someone adopt them. I think any electric vehicle that supports enhanced CarPlay is suddenly going to be really tempting to people. Once you get that upgraded version so that the car software is controlling the speedometer and it shows you your range and it gives you all of that detail, that car is going to be high in demand, even more so than it already is. Wasn't Apple the king of making good software? You have to make the hardware. Now they're just overlaying on some crappy OEM hardware. I'm with you. I wish Apple would have made a car years ago. I think they waited too long on it. But it's safe to say that building this kind of hardware is trivial compared to building car hardware. Building, a phone with a touchscreen and some cameras and biometrics and a battery. There's complexity to it. Don't get me wrong, but it's not very translatable to electric vehicle production. That's when you get into powertrain, batteries that have to be fast charged and cooled, and cycle life, and something that's supposed to last 10 or 20 years, not 4 or 8. They use totally different kinds of batteries, different charging, different cameras, different interior material. It's just a completely different field of manufacturing that doesn't convert easily. You don't just easily jump from making phones. Oh, we're making phones. I guess we'll start making cars now. Like, you have to just completely start from scratch. And yeah, I mean, I think Apple could have done it. They have the money to do it, but they just are playing it too safe and they're not being risky enough. Um, they could have partnered with an existing manufacturer, but they also could have just done it from the ground up. That probably would have been more profitable. Um, they could extract some good terms out of a desperate one. That's still possible, but uh, like Lucid or Canoe or something, Apple could buy them out and take over. But I think they've waited too long. I think they've been working on a car for like 8 years now, and they still haven't revealed anything. So they're going to be way late by the time they announce it, and they probably know that. So I just don't think Apple's going to make a car you can buy. They might make some vehicles that are like Google Waymo or Cruise, where they like ride hailing services around Cupertino in the Bay Area, but I don't think they'll make a car. Apple seems to love talking about self-driving and robo-taxis and stuff, but they don't. I don't think they have much interest in making like a Model 3, Model Y competitor, that kind of thing. Can you modify it to a Tesla? Yeah, I've seen people add CarPlay, but not usually to the display. They like add another screen, and that's how they add CarPlay, kind of. Base OEM software is all horrible. I don't know a single one that isn't laggy and has terrible UI. It makes sense to just adopt a full system like the new CarPlay. It's not only that, but just like we use our phones for so much these days. You know, I don't agree with Ben Solins on everything, but something he mentioned in his Rivian review that I agreed with is that because these phones are so important in our lives, we use them for communication and we use them for maps, and we have banking info on here, and you know our cameras are on here. We use our music and nav on these things. Like they're so capable. It's just natural that people are going to want their car displays to be an extension of their phone. They want that singular software experience to continue. And even if you don't want CarPlay on the Tesla, you could just not use it. You could just not activate it. But I do think it's a good idea, and it's a good point he brought up of like our lives are on these things. So of course we're going to want to expand that to the vehicle. And I know Rivian has said they don't plan on adding it, but I think if there's enough demand for any of these things, they'll eventually do it. But yeah, typical legacy auto software is pretty dang bad. You're right. Anyway, I've been live for over 90 minutes, and I better stop here, because if I'm not careful, I'll probably just stream all day. My wife's gonna wonder where I am. But I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I always enjoy the discussions we have here and all the subjects you guys bring up. So I'm still rooting for Rivian. I'm not pessimistic just because they're laying off people. I think that's actually the right call. I think that's a good sign. They're lowering operating expenses. Where to draw the line in what CarPlay does versus the vehicle? I get it for entertainment, but for driver assist, yeah, other things too, like preheating the battery, charging information, tailgate opening. You know, it's a tricky line, but I think that they need to come to some kind of agreement. Like in the Model 3 and the Model Y, they have the left column for the driver visualization and the gear selector and your speed. I think letting CarPlay take over the right 2/3 of the screen would be a good compromise. It's like, okay, you still have control Tesla, and you can still have all your buttons and controls there, but just have CarPlay off to the side. And hopefully there's a way to do that. But yeah, I'll try to do more Rivian vids. Anyway, thank you all for yeah, we gotta start a Rivian fund now. That's our next big purchase. No, it's not. But thank you all for tuning in, and I'm gonna be taking the next few days off just because we're gonna be driving again and visiting some friends along the way. So probably don't expect any videos from me until Wednesday. So just taking a little bit of a break, but I always enjoy chatting with you guys. Very grateful for all of you just watching, supporting the channel. You're all awesome, and hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.